Welcome to Careers Takeoff, where you learn the latest about how you can get ahead in your career. I'm your host, Conrad Chua. Welcome. I'm Conrad Chua, and I'm so happy to see all of you today to join us to learn about what's happening in the video games industry. And I'm really pleased to have with me from Pakistan one of our MBA alums, Hamza Mudassir. Hamza is in Pakistan. He's actually based in Cambridge, but he's in Pakistan for a family visit. And he's got tremendous experience in the games industry, having spent time after his MBA working for a Cambridge-based games company. So welcome, Hamza.
Hi, it's great to be here. Thank
Yeah,
you, Conrad.
sure. Before I ask Hamza to give maybe a bit of introduction about himself, just quick reminder for you watching on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Please, the session is only as good as the kind of questions or comments that you put in. And I've already seen some comments coming through, so thanks very much to Alex Harding for his comment. We'll come to very good question. We'll come to that soon. And you can start by posting where you're watching us from today, and maybe if you're a gamer, put in a line about what's your favorite game of all time. All right. So while we wait for you, while you put all that down on in the comments field, I wanted to turn over to Hamza. Hamza, do you want to just say very quickly a couple of words about your background and what you've been doing since the MBA?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi, I'm Hamza. I'm originally from Pakistan. I came over to Cambridge in 2012, did my MBA from there, and went to Amazon. But soon after, I was attracted to the video games industry in the form of becoming the head of strategy at what is now one of the biggest independent game studios in Europe called Jagex. The reason for doing that was I just loved video games. It is one of those things that really passionate hobbyists just love. And so when you get a chance to sort of combine the MBA and the industry you love, it's very hard to resist it. So I was there for 4 years. For people who do not know, Jagex makes one of the most popular video games in the world. It's called RuneScape. It's massively multiplayer online, which basically means a lot of people exist in the same world and play together, interact together, and basically have fun together. And after that, I joined an ed tech company called AdStream, and after that, I do independent consulting. I work with a bunch of boards, private equity, venture capital, so on and so forth, and help solve some of their problems when it comes to digital transformation.
Okay, great, Hamza. And throughout all that sort of all those twists and turns in your career, you've always still have this great love for games, right? Both as a gamer and also as the industry. Yeah.
Yes,
So let's
yes,
uh,
absolutely.
let's take a look at who's watching us right now. So Gary from Singapore, thanks very much. And his favorite game is Contract Bridge. Oh, I don't know whether that's the physical one or online, but well done, Gary. And Helen's watching from Missouri. Great, nice to see you, Helen. Victoria's from Brazil. We've got someone watching from JBS itself. Rubana's watching from India, and well, she'll be joining JBS right soon. We've got someone anonymous, but obviously not you, Hamza. I don't know who this is. This is always very scary. Yeah. And Kevin's watching us from Malaysia, and I know Kevin's been a big fan of our series, so thanks very much, Kevin, for joining. Um, and last one before we talk about, we've got Alex from South Australia. It's currently 11:20 p.m. and he loves Banjo Kazooie.
Yes,
Okay.
it's
I
a pretty
do
cool
you know what
game.
that is?
Yeah, I think it's a platform game, and it is very it's a lot of fun. It's very well rated. I've personally never played it, but it is very well regarded, and it's a very good game from what I've heard.
Yeah. And Alex also likes Hollow Knight.
Yeah, so there are
Again, I have
there
no idea.
yeah. Hollow Knight is what is known in the industry as an indie game, where a very small team does a lot of work, and they produce a game which has different mechanics, usually made on a very small budget. It's kind of like an independent film.
Mm.
So a lot of the games that you see, which are very mainstream, are like Mission Impossible. They're big, but then you have independent sort of filmmakers who make different kind of movies which broach different kind of topics, and you have something similar in the in the games industry. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess Jonathan Murphy agrees, and he calls it a classic. Yeah. All right. So let's start off, Hamza. First, for the audience, in case you don't realize this, I have no idea about the games industry. I never really been a great gamer, so it was a huge surprise to me to learn that actually the games industry is one of the is the largest in the entertainment sector. It's much bigger than the global box office and yeah, bigger than the music industry. So, Hamza, can you tell us a bit about why do you think the games industry is just so big?
I mean, it is. There are many reasons for it, right? But I think the underlying reason in this is that it's a great escape, and it's a great escape where you have control.
Mm,
Every like even the music industry, while presents some escape and movies present some escape, you don't really control how a movie runs. I mean, in the last Mission Impossible is going to end exactly the way the director wants it to be, but with more open-ended games, the journey is different for everyone, and sort of that sense of control while being going through escapism, I think makes it very valuable. I think the second thing is this, that there is a game for just about everything. I think that is something very important. That if you're into puzzles, there's a puzzle game. If you are into action, there are action games. If you want to meet people, there are sort of social network games. There is just a ton of variety in there, and every day there is a lot of innovation that is happening. So I think unlike the film industry, and unlike the music industry, one of the major drivers for the video games industry in itself is innovation. And whether it's innovation in business models, it's innovation in mechanics, in graphics, in hardware, in software, like you name it, the video games industry has it. And when you're innovating at that rate, the reason for innovating is definitely that you want to attract new audiences and and go deeper with existing ones. So this has resulted in almost like a very large footprint and a lot of variety. And obviously, last but not the least, is the fact that video games now run on just about anything. I mean, other than a toaster, you can run video games on just about any piece of silicon. And with sort of video game streaming, as it matures, it will then probably run on a toaster with a screen as well. And so the maximum available market is huge. The variety is very big, and the underlying sort of fundamentals, the fundamental human need of escapism from reality, and the ability to control that escapism, I think it's hard to resist, and so it will continue growing.
okay. Um, just going back to the data, um, over a longer range, you just see this whole there's a steady increase in terms of the revenue in this sector. And as you say, it's a very immersive sector, and technology has meant that it's getting a bigger and bigger footprint. And I'm sure we'll talk later on about how that things like AR or VR becomes um, helps that immersive sort of uh, nature of video games of the
Hmm.
video games sector. Um, we wanted to talk a bit about, well, for people like myself, right? God, don't know what it is. I just see people playing on a mobile phone or something. Can you tell us, talk a bit about the industry structure? What actually is covered in the games industry?
Yeah, I think this shows it quite nicely actually. I mean, the one thing that we might want to talk about is hardware, but I think for video games, especially really popular video games that are on a multitude of hardware, but that's like sort of a vertical that we don't have to worry about too much. I mean, the first one is mobile games. These are games that you download. I think I just saw that there is a comment by Angie Gary who talked about Clash Royale and Clash of Clans, and these are mobile games, and these are games that are primarily meant to be played for free, and over time as you get invested in the game, you buy power-ups or you buy skins or other digital goods within the game, and mobile games are predominantly running on that business model, and there is a very good reason for it. Because mobile phones are about almost now about instant gratification, y- a lot of game developers do not want the upfront price to be a source of friction and resistance. That is very that is very important. So because of that, most games are free, and as you play, you can also earn within the game so that you stick around. But ultimately, the idea is this: that you get invested enough that you start paying for a few things within the game. So that's mobile games, and then you have download games, which used to be the game that you would buy on a DVD, on PlayStation or on Xbox. You still can buy games off a DVD, but the moment you put it in the console, it starts updating and it basically downloads the whole game again in digital form. So downloads in its entirety are basically large scale games that run on PCs. They run on consoles. They tend to be, more often than not, they tend to be based on upfront purchases. So you pay like £50 or something, and you download the game, and then you play the game. They carry a single player component, they carry a multiplayer component. Sometimes these big download games also have the upgrades in them that you also pay. So increasingly the business models are sort of melting together, where you have a game that you've paid for upfront, and down the road you're paying for it again. Um so those are download games, and those are the ones that you might have heard of the most, like Call of Duty, God of War, Benju Kazooie. A few of the names that we saw in the chat. uh, those are largely download games, and they represent around like one fourth of the revenues of the industry. Then you have what is written over here as online games. These are games that, uh, and I'm going to use a term from the industry. uh, Online games are games where the fun is had by playing with others. It's almost as simple as that. So they don't really carry a lot of their own content that you can just sort of march away and do. But it is the fun of playing with someone else. It's kind of like football or hockey or cricket. They're also called massively multiplayer online games. A good example of that is League of Legends. It's a big game by this company called Riot, and in which two teams of four people sort of compete to take over each other's sort of fortresses, roughly areas. And this is a very large and growing part of the industry. And this is where the term esports came out. A lot of very young people, not people like me, but young people with better hand-eye coordination, play play games. Play these games together for prestige, for prizes, and these games are all online games. Last but not the least, you have gaming networks. These are basically service networks like Xbox Live, PlayStation Plus, Steam, Stadia. and they are basically software platforms, networking sort of uh, networking code and payment systems integrated together in the form of a multi-sided platform. Most of them are linked to a certain hardware type. Steam is linked to PC, Xbox Live is linked to Xbox, and PlayStation is linked to PlayStation console itself. On top of that, you now have subscription services like Netflix, so you have multiple sort of layers, and because the market is really big, a lot of them are just really growing, and that makes for a very interesting mix.
Okay. So you worked for many years with JagX, and you said
Yeah,
they do RuneScape, and I'm seeing a lot of love for that game on the comments. So where would that game be in these four categories?
I think that it falls under online games. It falls under online games. They now have a mobile version of the game as well, but it is basically the same sort of PC version where you, on a smaller screen, meet people and go on adventures with them. So that falls into online games or massively multiplayer online games.
Okay. Um, Moving away, I think the other thing, we showed the chart about global revenues going up, but what I thought
Mm.
was really interesting is how when we look at it regionally, China is very much the largest market, and the growth rate there is tremendous. So for most people
Yes.
outside China, we know about Xbox, like Activision and those kind of games, but what can you say about the how the games industry looks like in China itself?
I think the games industry in China is almost in a bubble of its own. I mean, there are a few Western titles that have made it big there. So, like World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, League of Legends. Um, but it's like probably not more than 10, I would assume. Everything else is deeply regional. Chinese games have very different mechanics. They have very different monetization methods. There are they're very focused on, for example, selling power ups, which in for people who are not from the games industry, it basically means it's a short term boost to your stats in a game, and it allows you to win more, and that is perfectly acceptable in China. In the West, gamers rebel against it. So while the business models, you could say, are microtransaction, the way games are built are just fundamentally different. And of course, there's a language barrier. There's a cultural shift, but they're very much in their own bubble. I think both Western games and Chinese games have tried to break into each other's markets because both markets are pretty big. But I mean, the success stories are far and few. Like it appears to be really hard, and the reasons are exactly this: the game design is different, the monetization design is different, the language, the visuals. They are in their own bubble. They are video games, but they're different.
Mm. And to anyone in the audience who maybe has lived or is watching us in China, and you have some, kind of comments or insights that you want to share, please put them in the comments field, because it's I think, as Hamza said, it's a very different world or different
Yeah.
environment in China, where the industry is so big that actually the government starts to regulate it, probably for quite different reasons than what a Western government might do, because they are concerned about how much time um,
Yeah, there
people in
is that as
China are
well.
spending on these games, right?
Yeah, there is that as
Yeah.
well. I think there has been a regulation change last year, especially with COVID, where unless until you are an adult, your time is governed on video games, and so a lot of children have found a way of using their dad's account to do that. But yeah, I mean, look, there are quite a few fundamental differences, but I think in terms of economics, um, and just the product itself, the differences are huge. The government regulations do play a part, absolutely, and they do create sort of entry barriers, but those are things that can be overcome. I would
Mm.
imagine they can be overcome, but everything else, oh, not so much. Western games are.
Oh, I think Hamza, are you still there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm still there.
Yeah.
Are
All right.
you?
Sorry, it
Yeah,
was.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. He just dropped out a bit. Um, Maybe at this point, Hamza, we just take a couple of questions. I saw that there were a few questions, two questions at least, um, about the complementarities across sectors. So Jenna Jenna and JBS asking, do you see any future partnership
Hmm.
opportunities between the music and gaming industries?
I, I mean, absolutely. Like, so for example, you for big AAA games, soundtracks are released, and many a times, for example, in Call of Duty franchise, you have a collaboration with Eminem, for example. You know, Eminem, the rapper, produces some angry music, and that resonates well with audiences on that front, right? So they are there. There are, for example, some games that are focused on music quite a bit. Um, these I mean, so back in the day, there was actually a game that allowed you to play music on a guitar on the video game. There is a game in VR called Beat Saber, where you use virtual reality hand sticks to sort of do beats for popular music. So there is overlap, but is it a massive overlap? Is it something that we can start seeing in one of the charts that Conrad showed? I mean, so far not. Um, so far, it is as much of a collaboration as, for example, Billie Eilish had a collaboration in the latest James Bond movie. She sung a song for it, and yeah, that's fantastic. But anything more than that, so far, does not look like it. I do think that it's probably worth pointing out that we have the whole metaverse movement, right? Where the internet becomes a video game ultimately. And there will be new business models that will come up where people are creating new music within the metaverse and then are selling it in the form of NFT. They are selling it in the form of, uh, in the form of rights. I just saw an example over here. Yes, there was a concert that was held by Ariana Grande in Fortnite. Ariana Grande, and yes, there these collaborations do happen, but are they significant enough synergies? That is yet to be seen. I think. But having said that, Fortnite is a very good example of the metaverse. And sort of coming back to that thread of thought, uh, I think creators will play a big part because the metaverse is essentially going to allow everybody to create something within a three-dimensional sort of world, and that could create new business models, and those new business models can can change what we have today. Right now, we have the old music industry, we have the old sort of video games industry, and they're overlapping in traditional ways. But when this sort of metaverse thing will happen, something will change.
Yeah, and I think it'd be good actually, if you mentioned NFTs,
Yeah.
what is your take on whether NFTs are good or bad for the gaming industry?
I think they're perfectly fine. I don't know what the big deal is about, right? So I'll just tell you what my understanding of NFTs are. NFTs basically allow digital goods to carry some form of an ownership trace, and as a result, can be valuable. So, for example, there is a digital Mona Lisa. You can copy it a billion times over, but the one which carries the NFT token can be considered the original sort of the original one, right? So the same way you can get a saucer with Mona Lisa painted on it. That's fine. Like, yep, that can work. absolutely not a problem. Does not make it the Mona Lisa. So NFT basically does what happens in the real world. That it says this person owns the original version of this thing. So I think generally I don't find that to be a problematic area. I think it is only natural that we are trading so much with digital goods that at some point authenticity a digital authentic token uh, is going to be critical for any value to be attached to it beyond what a company sells, right? So for example, in RuneScape, uh, just if you look at RuneScape, right? RuneScape can say, "Hey, we have these 10,000 skins that we are willing to sell. They are limited edition, and after that, we will not sell anything." Now, that's a very simple sort of business model where the supplier sort of restricts the supply of a digital good, and they make money. But in a creator sort of landscape, a creator can say, "I've made this sort of skin in the game, and this is the original skin. This carries a token that this is the very first skin I've made, and this is more valuable than any copies that you will be getting." In this way, the money flows to the creator. So from that perspective, I'm generally on the side of NFTs are good. They don't seem to be harmful.
Yeah, and you've already mentioned the hot, the other hot thing other than NFTs, which is the metaverse and
Yeah.
how that is going to be in the games industry. And I just wanted to put this on here. Um, as a parent, I who's not a gamer, I had no idea my daughter was doing all this on Roblox, and of course, I've got some concerns about the kind of gender stereotyping and some of that sexualization that seems to be going on. But I think, is this going to be what the metaverse is going to look like?
I mean, some parts of it will be. So if you take a step back, right? So what is they say? What is the matrix? And they say, well, you need to be in it to know it, right? And I think that's sort of almost a philosophical question of what is the metaverse? I mean, we need to experience it like a meta. I think at a very basic level, a metaverse is some place where you can feel presence. Presence through VR, AR, it basically makes you feel that you are there. And when you start thinking about presence in that way, then it changes from sort of the view that, oh, it is video games, or it's a three-dimensional internet. It is about saying, I'm in a place where I feel like I'm really there. And that is a very powerful feeling. Now, it is right now very nascent. VR has not really gone mainstream because of a multitude of reasons. But for example, in 2021, I think Facebook was able to sell 10 million units, which is quite a bit. The cost of making hello, the I seem to have been
No, you're still there. You're still there.
yeah, I'm still there. Okay, you went missing. Um,
Yeah.
and so the cost of headsets has been going down, and we are starting to see green shoots where things like Horizon Worlds, grew 10x in 3 months, and 300,000 users produced 20,000 different worlds in it. So presence is a very powerful thing. So it takes away, for example, so what did the internet do? The internet allowed searchability, internet allowed for lightning fast transactions. Presence, which is what the metaverse basically stands for, allows you to sort of get transported into different situations and to deal with it in a very natural, sort of human, in a very human way. And for that, yes, you need a working economy. The working economy will run on digital goods, and for those digital goods to carry any value, they need to have some sort of NFT. They need to have all of the other technology that people keep on talking about. Is it going to be the next big thing over the next 2 years? I don't think so. I think it will take some time. There are technology issues that are standing in the way for for VR and AR to become really big. But in 5 years' time, yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, there is no reason why it should not. So one of the things I think you asked was, will it look like Roblox? Is it a bunch of people
Yeah.
running, a bunch of kids running around in a variety of costumes? And one part of it could be that. So there is no reason why it shouldn't be. But that is not all of it. Like, so for example, when we think about medical school training. Let's take that as an example. You spend 5 years learning about the basic science of the human body, and the next 5 years, and imagine you have to be a cardiologist, and the next 5 years you need to spend following a doctor around and taking notes of how they diagnose a patient, just so that you'll be able to diagnose a patient in 10 years' time in a way. In a way that can save their life. So the amount of time it takes for a cardiologist to go from zero to hero is 10 years. Now imagine that if you are in a place of presence, you're in a virtual ER, and there is enough precision in sort of the hand control that you have. And the patients that you're looking at are artificial intelligence bots. You and another budding cardiologist from Kenya can work together and solve a multitude of problems in that simulation, while feeling exactly what a real doctor would feel, because you are feeling presence. It's not a video game. It is not an online test. It is not a whiteboard. You're there, and
Mm.
your hands are trembling. Your the adrenaline is pumping through your system, just the way it would in a real ER. And if and we've already seen that, for example, very basic simulations tend to improve test scores by like between 15 to 20%. This is what research has shown. um, Even if the metaverse, just taking that example, can reduce time to graduation from 10 years to 8 years, it will have a profound impact on equality across the globe. It will have a profound impact on health of people. It will have a profound impact on a lot of things related to cardiac health. And so, sort of narrowly thinking about the metaverse as just this one thing, this is how it has started, absolutely. But the feeling of presence, being there, and being enveloped by it, has a lot of use cases, and those use cases, I think, have no replacement. They have no replacement, and sooner or later the world will find a way of really making use of them, and then we will see the impact of it. The way, e-commerce in the start was a trickle, and then it became a tidal wave.
Mm. So, Hamza, we've got this question from Alex Harding, which I think really touches on what you just said about what do you think about the funding or the investment that will go into um, well, video games used for both educational and medical endeavors. And Alex has a very nice anecdote of how Wii Sports was used in nursing homes, Nintendo was used to introduce engineering. I assume you're going to say yes, there should be a lot more investment going into these sort of areas.
I mean, yeah, look, absolutely. I think that if we start thinking about the number one metaverse, so because of Facebook's announcements, Microsoft's announcements, Apple's own rumor mill has started that they are going to be launching an augmented reality headset. The market is heating up. So there is no
Mm,
question about that, right? I mean, there's been jokes on Twitter that every day a VC wakes up, takes a first sip of coffee, and says, where is my metaverse pitch? I want to see another company that does a metaverse pitch to me." So, because the sort of the largest tech companies are sort of going in that direction, there is no reason. I mean, the market is liquid for these sort of ventures. And yes, you have education. I mean, sort of the education example I gave. Um, I mean, you can look at it from identity politics. So, for example, we know that right now, the world is the Russian Ukraine sort of conflict and the war has been devastating, and a lot of people are, if you go on Facebook, a lot of my friends, many of them from Judge, have put on these little buttons that say, we support Ukraine. Um, Now imagine that you are able to do that with presence, and with sort of that feeling of being there, and that can that can catalyze entire social movements. Let's not forget, it was Twitter and Me Too that brought about very large changes in women's equality in the world we live in today. And so, while there is a lot that I'm talking about, we've gone from video games to social justice, um, LGBTQ identity. right? The feeling that the metaverse can allow you to feel like what and to look like exactly what you want, what you feel like on the inside without any judgment. So presence, the most important thing in this entire situation is presence. The feeling that you are there in a digital reality can catalyze a lot of things. I mean, there are other use cases for the metaverse as well. For example, there are robotics. You've all seen videos of Boston Dynamics in which the dog is losing its way, or there's little Amazon machine that is trying to find its way across aisles. They lose way, and through the metaverse, anybody can take over these machines and make them productive. And more of these machines will be required as we go into science and technology, trying to save people from the detritus of an earthquake or entering a volcano, right? So there is the use cases of presence are immense. And I think as the just like the mobile phone, I think when the cost right now is $350 or $300 for a virtual reality headset, and very very expensive for an augmented reality headset, as the cost will go down, the use cases will explode. And I think this is what VCs are looking at. And so the answer to a very long-winded way of giving you the answer is yes, absolutely. And if there is a company that you want to start that takes advantage of it and will be ready in 2 years to sort of take on these new presence powered use cases, go for it. The world needs it.
All right. Very quickly, we only have like 10 minutes, but there's tons of questions. But Rubana asked about the hardware side. So she says it seems like the hardware has a role to play in supporting the
Hmm.
games. Um, so what do you think about the role of hardware?
I mean, look, so hardware is both is important right now, but it is likely to become less and less important as 5G takes hold. So just like 4G before it, if there was no 4G, we would not have had no Uber, we would not have Netflix, we would not have a bunch of things that we take for granted today. And 5G is an expensive sort of a hardware investment for telecom companies. But with 5G comes quite a few advantages. Latency is one of them. Latency is like how long does it take for you to get something back from the internet, and high amounts of bandwidth. So in the case of video games, I think video game streaming will truly take off with 5G. And this means that you get very very high fidelity graphics that are being processed somewhere in a server, but is delivered to you at a lightning fast level. Like it is really really fast. And what that will do is this, that any upgrades that need to happen at the back end. And because it is in the back end, it can be shared with hundreds of customers, while you have a console which only sits with one customer. So the cost of hardware for, or the cost of entry, will become really really low, because the equivalent of one console can over time in 24 hours can serve 100 customers. So the cost of whatever, like $500 of pay paying for a PlayStation, can be distributed between 100 customers. And over time, that will keep on going down and down. So I think that while hardware is important, I think it is likely that its role will become truly restricted to people who are enthusiasts. So, for example, if you are a movie enthusiast, Rubana, you will buy a Blu-ray player. You will not watch the movie on Netflix because the graphics are a little pixelated. But for millions and millions and millions of people, that would be good enough. So that's where I think that's where the metaverse will head as well. That will bring down the cost of metaverse enabled headsets, because the compute power required will reduce significantly, because it will be done somewhere in the back end, and 5G will just throw it into our eyes, hopefully with low latency.
Okay. And Jack asks, what about, do you know, can you speak to any innovative engineering efforts related to tokenization, the use of digital assets in video games?
So I think how do I say it? So video games, there are some video games that are built around NFTs. Like, so there is a game called CryptoKitties that gives you like cryptocurrency for winning something. But I would say that one of the ones that I found very interesting was actually something which is parallel to gaming and a little looked down upon, which is gambling. And there's a disruptor in there called DraftKings. And so DraftKings is US based, and they've recently launched a marketplace, um, which is very NFT focused. I think they're in their first month they made $20 million worth of transactions on it, and on that they sell digital autographs of sports stars. So the Michael Jordans of this world and whatnot. And what you buy is, of course, you buy the JPEG, you get the picture, but you also get the NFT with it. And it has suddenly shown to the world that wait a tick, this thing actually has value. And what it does is that by just sort of combining the digital asset with actual value, and the rarity of it, right? Because yeah, I mean, I can go there, copy, right click, and copy that picture. It is not it is not the same autograph. And I thought that that was a fantastic sort of tokenization of digital assets. I found that I found that to be something that is likely going to creep into video games, where esports players will sell like their autographs, their sort of signed shirts with an NFT sort of backing it, saying this is the real one.
Mm. So it's not so much the engineering side that you're thinking about, but it's
Yeah,
more the business sort of applications and how businesses use that kind of technology.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And Alex Harding has another question, which I know you're very interested in, which is the kind of industry, big players, what's happening. So Alex asked, with Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, that's I think a 60 billion US dollar deal or something. And then companies like Tencent in China investing in AAA games, independent game publishers. Alex asks, is the industry becoming too monopolized?
I mean, that's a very, very interesting question, right? So, all industries go through some form of consolidation, and there is consolidation happening. Let's not forget, like there is consolidation happening. But consolidation usually happens when an industry growth slows down. And in this case, the industry growth rate is not, I mean, it's growing like a rocket, and yet there is consolidation. And so I think one of the things, what is happening right now um, is sort of like the Netflix effect, right? Uh, a lot of these companies are betting on monthly active users, they're betting on content, they're betting on exclusivity as a means to win in the future. So while even with the Activision Blizzard acquisition, Microsoft is still I think smaller than Sony in terms of their video games footprint. The idea is this, that buy now and reap benefits later. And with video games, especially massively multiplayer games, just multiplayer games in general, there's a concept that is known as network effects, which means that, and I've seen some of the examples, that some of the comments over here. Somebody recommended to Cecile, I think it was Rihan, who commented to Cecile that she should take on Counter Strike, which is a shooting game, right? And that's it's a shooting game that you play with your friends. It's like cops and robbers. And Cecile obviously said, thanks, but I don't want to go into violent video games. But the idea is this, that eh, with games, there's a learning curve. And then if your friends are there, then there's a lock-in effect. And when that lock-in effect happens, it's very hard to leave that game. So the same thing happened with RuneScape, same thing happened with World of Warcraft, same thing happens with Call of Duty. They have these big communities that are now locked in, and they are almost like, my friend is there, I can't leave. I need to buy this console because all my friends are there. So I think this sort of thing is not because there's going to be monopolization happening, but mostly because it's a bet on the future that these communities will hold. That's one, and then they will grow into bigger communities.
All right. Um, we have very little time left, but I can't let you go, Hamza, without you talking very briefly about one of your well, one of a theory that you've had or recommendation that you had for
Yeah,
Reed Hastings and Netflix, which is you've been a big proponent for several years now that Netflix should move into the games industry. Can you tell us why?
I mean, I and another professor at Judge Kamal Munir wrote this article, I think around three years ago or something, um, where we said that look, hey, Netflix is sort of is hitting the boundary of what it does, which is streaming videos, right? Its growth rate has slowed down. Now you go back and look at analyst reports, and they seem to be missing their sort of subscriber targets every now and then. And there's only so much that you can watch on Netflix. There's only so much amount of time. So that was one, that hey, you're hitting the maxima of what you can do in what you're doing right now. I think the second thing was this thing we picked up from the CFO of Netflix in one of his investor calls. He said our biggest competitor is the time of the consumer, and in this case, it's Fortnite, which is Epic Games' sort of massively multiplayer online game. People are either watching Netflix or they're playing Fortnite. And so we compete with Fortnite. We don't compete with Disney Plus. We don't compete with these guys. And so the second thing is this, that they sort of made their main audience. They spend their money there. The third one was that the Witcher series. So I don't know how many of you have watched The Witcher on Netflix, but do watch it. It's a really good show. Um, that Once The Witcher was launched on Netflix as a TV show, uh, the company that makes the Witcher games saw a massive spike, and every time there's a new season, there's a massive spike in the Witcher games. And I remember that that company went from a $6 billion valuation to an $8 billion valuation in, like, I think a week or two. And so these sort of synergies, that's when I say that, yes, there is an Ariana Grande sort of concert that happens that happens in Fortnite, but that does not produce this impact. When we're talking about impact of these really really large companies, we have to look at billions of dollars. And so, I mean, Netflix has a large IP footprint that it has either licensed or made itself, and video games are a very good synergy for it. And also with 5G and streaming, I think last the point was this, streaming of video games where you don't need hardware anymore, where you can essentially have the Netflix model where you have a stick and a controller and it just works on a fast enough internet. It's becoming a reality. And there are quite a few providers now. They could work with any one of them. Just the combination of it was a very good fit. You don't have to invest in hardware. You don't have to make new consoles. Um, you have a national marketing engine. Um, your core consumers, you are losing money of your core consumers to an adjacent market. And just like and you've hit the boundary of what you can do with your existing business model. So combined together, it made sense for them to sort of step out of their comfort zone. I think last year they announced it. They hired an industry heavyweight. They have first gone into mobile games, which, I mean, I've been playing quite a few of Netflix mobile games, and they're quite good. And my hope is this, and especially with 5G, and as their catalog sort of matures, they've also just announced an acquisition of one of the studios, and so they're becoming more and more and more active. I wish I could say that our article, mine and Kamal's article, was the sole reason why they did it. I'm sure they were thinking about it before, but we sort of said, look, if you want to continue being a top stock, you got to take some risks. And so they have started doing acquisitions. They've entered mobile games. They have a different business model that is deeply linked to the Netflix subscription. And right now the game of video games is monthly active users. If they can get more subscriptions for Netflix through their video games, or vice versa, their stock price will only go up. So all in all, I think this is a very interesting space. Netflix, let's see what they do. I can't hear you. I can't hear you, Conrad. I'm so sorry.
Yep, sorry about that. So Reed Hastings, if you're in the audience, I know you're a big fan of Cambridge, a big fan of Hamza. Please take his advice. So thank you, everybody. Thanks, Hamza, for your time. It's been such a wonderful session with you. Your passion and your knowledge for the games industry is tremendous, and I want to thank the online audience as well. This session was really, really down to your questions and comments.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Um, the next episode that we'll have is actually not next Friday, but the Friday after that, the 25th of March, same time, 12:45 to 1:30 p.m. UK time, where we're having another CJBS alum, Kate McCaslin, who'll be joining, who's had a lot of experience, a long career in the filmmaking industry, and she'll be talking to us about the Academy Awards and the movie business, so another part of the entertainment industry. So please remember to join us, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn. And thank you once again to Hamza. You've been great. I look forward to seeing you in Cambridge.
Very soon. Yeah.
Yeah. And to the audience, I hope you everything's well with you, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.